How's it going, Thrivers? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, I'm going to answer a question I get asked a lot. Did I always believe that I would fully recover from CFS? And by the end of this video, hopefully this inspires you and gives you some hope, especially if you're going through a rough time and you've been on this journey for quite a while. You've been going along with this and you feel like you're reaching almost that breaking point, right? So people see my life now, right? And they see I'm able to travel, they see I'm able to exercise, work out, go out with friends. I can work long days, operate on very little sleep, pretty much eat whatever I want. And they look at me and they say, you don't even look like you ever went through that. I'm surprised that you actually have this whole background, especially people I meet nowadays. So the people I meet moving into these different social circles, right? I'm 30 years old and I go to a lot of networking events for business. I go to a lot of just leisure events. I like to travel quite a bit. So you get introduced to all these different people, and each person I meet, the topic comes up of, what do you do? I tell them, well, I help people who suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID, fibromyalgia, and people are very confused. They have no idea what I'm talking about. And when I break it down further, they say, that sounds interesting, but how the heck did you get into that? What made you want to start this business? And what made you want to start this YouTube channel? And I basically tell them it's because I went through it, right? I used to not be able to walk. I used to be hospitalized. I used to be completely bedridden, to the point where my grandma was spoon feeding me for about 6 months, where I couldn't shower more than once every 3 or 4 weeks. I couldn't open my eyes sometimes. I had to wear a blindfold. I had to wear earplugs plus, construction earmuffs, because even just her opening the door to bring my food into the room, even that was extremely taxing and stimulating on my body, to the point where she turned the lights on and I would feel severe pain. She would open the door and the sound of it would be echoing and ringing in my ears, right? There were times when I couldn't even turn over in bed. When I tell them that, they kind of look at me like I'm crazy, because they look at me and I'm healthy, right? To them, I'm healthy. To them, you would never know that Miguel Bautista was once completely bedridden, was once just a young kid, 20, 21, 22 years old, wondering if he would ever walk again, wondering if he would ever exercise again, would be able to hold a job, would be able to go travel, would be able to drive a car again and just live a normal life, because the Miguel today is totally different from the Miguel that existed several years ago, right? And so I tell them this and they can't believe what they're hearing. It just doesn't make sense, because they're looking at me and then they're listening to what I'm talking about, and it just does not compute. So then I pull up my phone, show them some videos of me in the hospital, me in a wheelchair, and then it clicks. They say, oh, you were actually that bad. Wow, I heard you saying these things, but people can't comprehend what I went through, right? They can't fathom it until they see pictures of me in a hospital bed and me getting spoon-fed and videos of it. So I'm actually glad my family and friends documented all of those things that I went through. But if I go back in time, right, it's easy for me to say now that, yeah, I was confident in my recovery. I always knew that there was going to be a life after CFS. I always knew this was going to be my destiny, to be out in the world living again. I'd be lying, because there were so many nights and weeks and months and years where that was just a glimmer of hope. That was just a small part of my belief system, when most of what I believed was, I'm probably not going to get better, especially not with the stuff that I'm reading on these Reddit forums. Those Reddit forums were the absolute worst, right? I'd search up my symptoms, go down these different rabbit holes, and everything was kind of pointing to the CFS thing, but there was nothing really online that was talking about how you could beat this thing. I mean, there were some videos on YouTube about it. I think there was a couple programs online, but nothing that I fully clicked with, and nothing that led to me recovering. I mean, I recovered through the things my doctor taught me, which I only met him years into my illness. So when I place myself back in my shoes of 19, 20, 21-year-old Miguel, I remember so many nights where my symptoms were flaring up really bad. POTS symptoms, heart palpitations, weak legs, anxiety, chest pain, blurry vision, headaches, nausea, migraines. And I remember being in my room so many nights, writing down in my journal, just crying, pouring my heart out, just begging for the universe to forgive me for what I ever did to deserve this, basically. And I would get a little bit better, then a little bit worse, a little bit better, and even more worse. And it was like a cycle that just kept repeating itself over the years. And just when I thought I gained some traction, just when I thought I was finally coming out of this, boom, I get hit with another crash, another hospital visit, more supplements, more specialists, more doctors, more me having to explain to all of my friends. And at the time I was a personal trainer trying to build my career, having to explain to my clients how, hey, I can't make it today. Hey, I'm off for the next week. Hey, I got to take another 3 months off. And there were so many times where I had to slam the brakes on life, right? So the truth is, when it comes to the question, did I always believe that I was going to recover from CFS? The truth is no. In fact, there were many times where I pretty much just accepted that, okay, even if I'm able to walk again, even if I could somehow be in a wheelchair, I just want to be able to go outside. I remember one day, this is when I was at my grandparents' house. They were taking care of me and I was nearly at my worst. I remember I turned my head and sometimes the blinds would be slightly cracked open, so you could kind of see the outside world. And this is when I could tolerate a little bit of light, a little bit of stimulation. So I'd turn my head, I'd wake up in the morning, basically like waking up. My dreams were actually better than my reality. So it's like I woke up to a nightmare. Normally people go to sleep and they have nightmares. My nightmare was when I was awake, right? And when I was asleep, I was actually better off then, right? So sometimes I would wake up and think, why did I wake up? I kind of wish I didn't wake up, you know, because at least when I'm asleep, if I could even get sleep, which was extremely rare, once every few weeks, in my sleep, I didn't feel pain and I forgot that I was sick. And in my dream, at least I could walk, at least I could talk to friends, at least I could even think straight in my dreams. But when I woke up, everything was just pain and suffering. And so I remember, you know, that transition when you're just starting to realize that you're kind of awake, it's like the dread would start pouring on. I'd be in bed and reality would sink in as I started to open my eyes and, you know, come to my senses. I woke up to that reality. And there were times when I kind of wished I didn't wake up, to be honest, right? So waking up, it was not a pleasant thing. But I would wake up and some days I would turn over and look at the blinds. I remember the light would shine in my face. I'd be squinting and I'd see people walking to the bus stop. I'd see somebody driving a car. I'd see these construction workers working on a house, using the hammer, climbing up and down the stairs. And I thought, how nice would it be just to walk outside? How nice would it be to just get some fresh air, to sit up straight? I couldn't even sit up straight at this point. I tried to sit up straight so many times. Crazy pot symptoms, just constant downward spirals. I'd crash just from sitting up and trying to stand up, actually. So there was a time when I thought, if I could just be in a wheelchair and feel minimal symptoms, even if I didn't have to walk for the rest of my life, I would actually be way happier than just surviving day to day. So that was my standard. That was my North Star. That was my goal, right? Now, obviously, life is a bit different, but at the time being, I couldn't think of anything higher than that because all my dreams and hopes had been crushed over and over and over again. So there was a time when I really didn't think I'd fully recover, but that's very different from, you know, completely giving up, right? I had hope. I had hope that maybe I could get better, but the data was telling me a whole different story. It's like my internal drive, my motivation, my desire to get better was way up here, but the momentum and progress, the proof that I was moving in the right direction was like way down here, right? So there's a discrepancy between my thoughts and my reality. And so I thought about it this way. I'm the kind of person that if you drop me off in the middle of the ocean and I don't even know where the closest island is, I'm not just gonna stop swimming. I'm gonna keep on swimming. I don't know what direction it is. I don't know how long it's gonna take to get there. I don't even know if there's an island within 1,000 miles, but I don't care. You could drop me off in the ocean. I don't care. You could drop me off in the ocean, I'm still gonna swim. I don't care. I will die swimming. I'm not just gonna be the person who you drop off and I'm just gonna say, oh, well, I guess there's no island that I can see. I guess I'll just give up and let me just sink. And that was not my mentality. It was gonna be, I will fight this thing till the very end, until my last breath. I don't care what it takes, but I'm not going out like that, right? If this is gonna take me out, it better take me out because I am not laying down and letting this be my life. There's no way I'm accepting this as my reality, you know? I wanna at least get out of this bed or I don't wanna be here anymore, right? So I made the decision that I'm gonna keep fighting. And I don't care how much pain, how much suffering I go through. This is pretty dark, but it got to the point where another motivating factor for me was, you know, I didn't have a purpose to live at that point, but I had family around, I had friends around, and I almost had to create this purpose, right? And filming a video like this, running this YouTube channel, running CFS recovery, that was an invented purpose in my head, right? So it's kind of crazy how this all actually came to life. But I thought, if I do recover, imagine all the people that I would be able to help. I don't even know how I'm gonna recover. I don't know how any of this works, but if I were to recover, imagine the story that would be. Imagine the other people that you could help, right? Miguel, the Miguel part of you, wants you to just give up right now. So I had to find a deeper purpose, right? This was for my family. This was for my friends. This was for the future people that I was going to impact, right? People like you. And so I had that in my mind, but ultimately it was the mentality that no matter what, I'm not going to stop swimming. And it feels like you're drowning when you have CFS, not just physically, but like spiritually and mentally. It feels like you're going through every day with a 1,000-pound weighted vest that no one else can see, but only you can feel, right? But even with that, it didn't mean that I was just going to stay down and just give up. And so I think that is the mentality that got me through this ultimately. And when I think back to it, if we go back to that analogy of being dropped off in the middle of the ocean, it's just you have to swim long enough for a boat to come by and spot you, or swim far enough to cross paths with something like a lifeboat or a life buoy, something to grab onto to get you out of this mess. Now, no one else is gonna do the work for you. No one else is gonna pull you out of there and give you a magic pill, but there's gonna be things you come across on your journey. Things like this video, things like the strategies I share on the YouTube channel. Maybe it's another channel, maybe it's a program, something to latch onto to help pull you out of these trenches, right? Even me, myself, I can't swim 1,000 miles. I can swim maybe 10 miles, 15 miles, right? But at some point, I'm gonna need to grab onto something because I can't do this on my own. I couldn't have done it without my doctor. I couldn't have done this without actually understanding what's going on. And I definitely couldn't have done it without understanding how progress cycles work, how it's actually okay to have symptoms, how it's not always a crash, right? Most of the time it's an adjustment period, right? I wouldn't have been able to do this if I didn't understand those things. And honestly, I don't think I would have found that out by myself. I needed somebody to tell me those things, right? So you just need to swim long enough for you to cross paths with something that resonates with you, something that makes sense, and something that you can just kind of grab onto that can help take you back to shore, can take you back to safety essentially. And so that's why I put out so much of this free content on YouTube. I think about it like I'm basically throwing life rafts or buoys out into the ocean of people who are dealing with this. Some people will find us, some people may not find us. But if you're watching this video right now, then I guess you're pretty lucky because you did find this channel. There's some strategies here that you can use completely for free in order to start gaining momentum and getting unstuck. As time went on, as I started to make progress, that belief went from like 0.001% that I might get better to like 1%. Then 2%, and then 3%, then 10%, 20, 30, 40. And it's gotten to the point now where I'm beyond 100% belief that I'm recovered or that my body is capable of so much more than I thought. I'm actually at the point where I will borderline push myself to try to get symptoms just to see if this thing comes back. Good example of this is I was in Europe on a 2-week trip, and I just got back about 48 hours ago from a 10-day trip. Now, both of those Euro trips, it was nonstop. I was sleeping maybe 4 to 5 hours a night. I was walking 10,000 steps a day. And in fact, one of the trips, I went to the largest music festival in the entire world, right, called Tomorrowland. There's about 400,000 people there. And I was in the middle of the crowd, jumping up and down for 8 hours. You know, I was drinking water, I was having some alcohol, I was eating like a lot of junk food. And even my friends looked at me and they're like, yo, how do you have so much energy? Like, how do you keep this pace? Don't you feel tired? And, you know, after doing a lot of self-discovery and finding out, you know, my values and understanding how my body works, how my brain works, I'm able to get so much more out of my body than I used to, right? So not only is my output higher than what it used to be, but I'm more anti-fragile. Like, I have more energy. My recovery time is way faster. I could go really hard on a trip, nonstop for 10 days, and it'll take me about 1 or 2 days of sleeping in an extra 3 to 4 hours to recover. And so now I have, without a doubt, like beyond 100%, I have surpassed that. Like, I'm really, really thriving now. And at this point, I do feel like I'm anti-fragile, and I have zero fear about getting sick with CFS again, right? I have a higher tolerance than most of my friends with the amount of things that I do during the week, the amount of calls I take, screen time, how much work I do, how many times I go out to hang out with friends, how much I change time zones when I do travel. It doesn't affect me, right? And to go from somebody who was completely bedridden, whose North Star goal, his deepest wish was just to be able to sit up in a wheelchair and be able to roll down the street without symptoms. That was my biggest goal before. And I thought even that was impossible. So to go from that to being somebody who can work 40 plus hours a week and exercise and travel and maintain relationships and, you know, keep up with my friends and family, it's pretty surreal, right? But now I don't even think about recovery. In fact, it all feels like a bad dream. But it all started, you know, from a very, very low place. right? It started from a place where I barely believed that I could get better. And so I've seen it happen with so many people. Inside of all of our programs, we've worked with, thousands of people at this point, almost 3,000. And it's really interesting. Sometimes I'll be on a call in the morning with somebody who has a hard time believing they could actually recover and get their lives back. And they're like, I don't know, this thing seems too good to be true. I don't know if it can help me. Yeah, I see you have 60 plus hours of case studies and testimonials and thousands of screenshots, but I'm different. Maybe I'm not a good fit. And, to go from that conversation in 1 hour and the next hour, I'm doing a recovery interview with someone who was in their exact position 9 months prior, or 5 months prior, or 7 months prior. And we're doing a recovery interview about how far they've come and how they never thought they'd recover, but here they are. They're skiing, they're hiking, they're traveling, they're working. It's just crazy to see how much people can change over time. Right? But so much can happen in 6 months. So much can happen in 12 months. I went from being in a hospital bed to hiking up a mountain in Hawaii in 12 months. It was actually 11 months, if we want to be specific. It was less than a year. But your belief and your confidence in yourself builds over time. So don't be worried if in the beginning you're having doubts. If you're scared, if you're asking yourself, what if this doesn't work out? What if I was having a good 2 weeks and now I'm feeling pretty crappy and did I just cancel all of that stuff? Don't worry about it. Because that's where I started. And every single person who's recovered from this has had those doubts, has had those thoughts. But over time, the reason they were able to break through that and actually achieve that life of thriving health is because they kept believing in themselves, right? And they kept focusing on what was working, focusing on the forward momentum. And I'm a firm believer that the only time you should ever look back is to see how far you've come. And so when you're on this journey, the brain likes to play this comparison game of where was I 2 weeks ago? Where was I 2 months ago or 6 months ago? Only look back to see how far you've come. And it's not always physical gains. There's a lot of mental gains and emotional gains. Maybe you're more able to handle stressful situations. Maybe your cognitive capacity, you could go on phones more, you could talk to people more. Maybe it is physical capacity increases, right? You only want to look back to see how far you've come. And that's a trick that really worked for me. And also being excited about the future, because the more you unlock in your capacity and health, it's like your options of things to do gets wider and wider. In the beginning, it's like you're looking through this very narrow lens. I can only sit up. I can only take a shower once a week. I can only do this and that. As your capacity increases that perception, that perspective, the lens of which you see the world in terms of the options of things you're able to do, it gets wider and wider and wider until you get to the point, like now I'm at the point where it's like ultimate freedom. It's like I look at this, I could go on a boat to, look over here, there are like some islands over here, right? I could go for a swim here. I could go paddleboard if I want. I could go eat some sushi. I could go eat a burger. I could go call a friend up and hang out with him. I could go play guitar. I could watch a movie. I could play on my laptop. I could film videos like this. And so your horizons, your perceptions of the world changes as you get better, right? And the more it opens up, the more you just see life as this ultimate playground, essentially. And you just believe that, you can handle anything. But it all starts with believing in yourself in the beginning. And it doesn't have to be full belief. It can start very small. And so I could talk about this for hours. I love talking about these topics, but I just wanted to give you guys an insight on, how my mind works and how it continues to work, right? I wasn't always the Miguel you see in these videos. I wasn't always this confident about recovery. I wasn't always able to communicate like this, right? I wasn't always able to, the Miguel you see today was forged from thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of small tweaks, right? Of getting better little by little, of never giving up, taking it day by day. And the cool thing is, this is just getting started. I mean, I'm actually here right now. I just finished, for example, filming a bunch of videos for our Beyond Recovery program, because there are so many people recovering from our recovery systems that we get the question now, well, what do I do now that I'm recovered? I don't want to go back to my old life. I want to build this 2.0 version of myself. I want to make sure I never get sick again. And we have a program for that. So I was filming a bunch of videos using some analogies of the ocean and all of that. And there's just so much life to be lived on the other side of CFS. And that's why I encourage you to keep on going. No matter how dark it is, no matter how hard it seems, there's a whole different version of you waiting on the other side of the suffering. And at the end, once you get past all of this, you're gonna realize that this was actually one of the best gifts you could have ever received, one of the best gifts you could have experienced, because the person you become in the process of healing and beating CFS, that's not something money can buy. That's not something that somebody can give you, right? That is an experience you and you only can go through yourself. And through that journey, you're going to become the absolute best version of yourself. And so I hope you enjoyed this video. Always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.
I'd say that CFS recovery is absolutely the real deal.
I actually felt like somebody had an answer, like somebody explained what was going on and it all clicked.